Mary Byrne, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while because I know the incredible work you've done for years on behalf of Kiwis having clean drinking water and water that's free of chemicals. There is a whole story there because you're part of what organisation?
Oh, Fluoride Free New Zealand.
And what is the ethos of that organisation? Why was it founded?
It was founded to keep fluoridation chemicals out of the drinking water. Yeah, and to stop it in the places in New Zealand that already have it.
And very briefly, we're going to come back to this a bit later. Kiwis who say, well, fluoride's a good thing, it stops holes in my teeth. How do you summarise that answer to that generic question?
Yeah, well, it doesn't actually stop dental decay, which is the only reason given to put it in the water. So it doesn't do that. It actually damages teeth because it causes dental fluorosis, but also it's a neurotoxin, and it is not an essential nutrient in any way. So a lot of people think that fluoride is like calcium or magnesium or something like that, and that our water just doesn't have enough, that we're deficient. But there's no such thing as being deficient of a poison. So fluoride is actually just straight a poison. It's like some water supplies can have high amounts of arsenic, and you would want to take that out. People do. It's the same idea. Some water supplies are high in fluoride around the world, naturally high, and it causes devastation actually to people. All their bones, you know, the children are crippled and the adults are crippled over and all the rest of it. At our lower levels, we don't see that as acutely, but you know, it does cause arthritis because it accumulates in the bones and everything. So there's arthritis, it lowers the thyroid, it interferes with your immune system because it's a poison, you know, so you're having a poison every day via your drinking water. But the most important thing where we've got the most research, the most robust research, is that it lowers children's IQ.
And that goes back to the toxin issue, is that neurology, that's the development of our neurons in our brain, our synapses, our connectors in our brain. Is that what neurotoxin is?
Well, a neurotoxin is that it's poisoning the brain. So fluoride is poisoning the brain.
So we will come back to this because there's another issue I need to start with today. But of course, Mary, I will want to be able to add in the research that you can give me to back up all those claims. Can you give me that research?
Yeah.
Before we move to the other issue of local body elections for which you're standing, I want to ask you, how many countries around the world are fluoridating their water to the level that New Zealand is? Because Ashley Bloomfield recently recommended that all our water should be fluoridated, and we know now that Ashley Bloomfield's advice on all the jabs is highly questionable. Ashley Bloomfield's credibility is really leaching out as fast as he's run away from the job. But why, is that a good idea that he's recommended that, or why would you say it's not, and how many other countries are recommending what he recommended?
Okay, so how many countries in the world fluoridate? So there's only around 8 countries that have more than 50% fluoridation. So, you know, even in New Zealand, only about 50% of New Zealanders are fluoridated, or, you know, have a fluoridated water supply. And that's because, and it's only 21 councils at the moment out of 67. And that's because Auckland, you know, a big area like Auckland, Wellington, Dunedin, Hamilton. But, you know, Christchurch isn't fluoridated, and most of the townships are not fluoridated around the country. So the other countries are the USA, that's about 70%, Australia about 70% or more actually in Australia, Ireland. That's the only other country that has like a mandatory fluoridation, because even Australia and the US, it's the local townships that make the decision, but in Ireland it's a national decision. So Israel used to fluoridate, but they stopped. Now, they used to be the other country that was nationally fluoridated. So now we're only one of 2 that have a national mandate to fluoridate.
These Labour government mandates, driven by Ashley Bloomfield, have to stop. Nobody, no consultation that I saw for that decision from Bloomfield.
No, you're not allowed consultation actually now. So do you want me to give you the background of how come we got to that?
Well, we're here, so let's go into it.
Okay, so what happened is, so before our group there was Pure Water, New Zealand Pure Water. So there had been people in New Zealand that were stopping fluoridation, you know, and that's why it wasn't in so many towns, because there had been people who weren't fluoridated and they were like, no way, why do we don't want this. So thankfully we had those people that got active, and back in the day it was a lot easier to oppose something. You were allowed to have opposing viewpoints. Even 10
even
years
when I
ago.
was in the media, there were spaces where we would report on those protests and get the views of both sides, something that no longer exists in mainstream media.
No longer exists, for sure. So anyway, so what had happened was a lot of the pure water people had got old, and then there weren't many people left in it, and so then we came along. Well, I started in Petone, that was 1999, and the baton was passed over from a guy called Bill Wilson from Auckland, and the people around the country that were still active, we've all kind of got involved, because of course we're a team, we're a group. No one does any of these things by themselves, and so we were making good progress, because we were going to the councils with the science. We had the science, and we had common sense. Yes. For starters, you don't even need the science, because it's just common sense, isn't it? If you want to medicate someone, well, what dose should they be medicated at? So if you were to go and take a medication and you went and took amoxicillin or something, or maybe iodine, maybe you had low thyroid and they wanted to give you iodine, they'd say, okay, well, you might need to take 5 milligrams a day, or say maybe, for your weight. So they'll work it out, milligrams per kilo per day. So any medication. So you would get a higher dose than a child of 10, obviously, right? And we wouldn't give it to a baby whose thyroid is functioning perfectly well.
Yes.
So by the same token, if we wanted to give a dental medication, why would we give the same dose, or just some unknown dose, to everybody and give it to people like babies who don't even have teeth?
Yes.
So we're giving it to them anyway. Like,
so in effect, our water becomes a medication that none of us has personally agreed to.
Yes, and the New Zealand Supreme Court ruled in 2018 that it is compulsory medical treatment. So as high as our Supreme Court, they've gone, yes, this is compulsory medical treatment. It does contravene Section 11 of the Bill of Rights, which says that we all have a right to informed consent to medication. But there's sections 4 and 5 which go on about justification. I think mostly section 5 says, in a democratic society, is this a justified limitation on our rights? And the Supreme Court ruled 4-5, 4 of them against one of them, that yes, it was a justified limitation. And I think that's incredible, because there isn't even any specific law that says to have fluoridation. They just looked at the Health Act and this, that and the other and said, well, we think it's implied, so we think it's a...
So while we're here talking about fluoride, and you made all those claims at the beginning of the dangers of it, why is this government not aware of those dangers? If there is the scientific proof that you're going to provide for me that will attach to this interview, why is that not getting through to our government, do you think?
Oh, they know. They know. They did a report in 2014. So because we were making progress, right, with the councils, so we got it stopped in New Plymouth, Taumarunui, Waipokoro. We got it stopped in Hamilton for a while. We had a big tribunal there. We got it stopped, and then it got political, and this mayoral candidate got a referendum, and it got put back in. And also we were going to Wellington councils and the Auckland Council, and those councillors were getting uneasy. So there started to be reports, like in the Dominion Post in Wellington, for the DHB members saying, hey, these guys are coming to us. Well, one of them said, these guys are coming to us with shotguns, and DHB, you're coming to us with water pistols. If you want us to keep fluoridating, you've got to give us some ammunition, we can't keep doing it.
Meaning shotguns that you're well researched, you've got the information. Wow.
And so then we were at the Kapiti Coast, and it's sort of like we're the victim of our own success in ways, because the councillors felt like they were the meat in the sandwich, because we were coming to them with the evidence and, as I say, the common sense and the moral side of it, but the Ministry of Health is telling them to do it anyway. So they're like, well, what are we going to do? Now, they should have just had the integrity to stop, like some places did, like New Plymouth did, or Taumarunui, they stopped. But the Kapiti Coast councillors didn't have that much integrity, and they were probably See, this is where the media comes in. They were probably concerned that the media will call them tinfoil hat wearers, you know, et cetera, and then they wouldn't get voted back in. But maybe, you know, I've always said, oh, they care more about being voted back in. But it might be that they're more concerned about being made fun of. That might be what it is. People don't like being made fun of. It's horrible.
Which is what we have to do to this government and what we have to own ourselves. I don't mind being called a tinfoil hat wearer anymore. I don't mind being called a conspiracy theorist, an anti-vaxxer. I was anti this vax. I am definitely looking at information now, and if being someone who researches and questions goes under the title of conspiracy theorist, then it's a compliment.
Yeah.
And tinfoil hat wearer is the same. It becomes a compliment when the mainstream media is lying to us. Why, Mary, why do you think our government is looking more and more as if it works against us? On the fluoride issue, is there someone coming in and paying our government people to get this through? What are the theories that float around on this?
The theories. Okay, but hang on, I'll just finish about Kapiti Coast. So what they did is they took it to local government New Zealand and they said, we don't want to make the decision, we want central government to make the decision because we don't want to be the meat in the sandwich. And that's how come it moved to central government. Right, so that's the backstory behind why it's moved away from local council decision making into the hands of the Director General of Health.
So it's no longer in local council hands?
No.
Okay.
No.
And what year was that?
That all started around 2014, but it's taken time because 2015. So then the national government were in and they brought it the bill in 2016. Then we had the select committee, the beginning of 2017. Piles of people put in, you know, over 1,000 put in submissions, and lots of us went and spoke and all the rest of it. Then that year, 2017, Labour got in, but they got in with New Zealand First and the Greens. And New Zealand First, particularly Clayton Mitchell, who was the Tauranga MP, he stopped it. So he kept it stopped.
Well done, Clayton.
Yeah.
So that was stopping the centralisation of power to say who should and shouldn't have fluoride.
Yeah. So he was putting a stopper on it, and then of course, so nothing happened. So we've had 3 years of just nothing happening. We couldn't really go to the councils because they'd say, oh, there's a bill coming through that's, you know, the government's going to take it. So, you know, everything just stopped. But then 2020 happened and Labour's got full reign, so they've just pushed it through. Oh, and the original bill was for it to go to the DHBs. But of course, Labour got rid of the DHBs, so that's why it's gone directly to the Director General of Health.
So it was going to be decided through the DHBs with a little bit of a local input, but now we've got the Director General of Health saying what? What did he announce?
Oh, so what the Act says is that he only has to look at dental health, so he doesn't have to look at anything else, even though everybody's drinking it from, you know, womb to tomb sort of thing, everybody, because, you know, that's important in utero. Exposure is really important.
Why, Mary?
Well, because they get a really high dose, and now that's known that dose that they're getting, the science says that it's impacting on their brain development. It's lowering IQ.
My God.
Yeah. So
I'd appreciate that study as well, so I can look at that.
So that is the 2019, the best one is the 2019 study from Canada that was published in JAMA Pediatrics. So that's the top pediatric journal in the world. It was a multi-million-dollar study funded by the US government. It was top researchers from all over North America from the top universities. So you don't actually get better science than that. Now, when that got published in JAMA, the editors were worried about publishing it because they knew they were going to get piles of flack. And that was like the top downloaded journal for a long time. Not journal, I mean study, because so much interest around the world in the study saying that it lowers IQ for children exposed in utero and the bottle feeding children that are bottle fed. So that was in Canada, right? And they actually have a lower level of fluoride. So I mean the amount of fluoride put into the water. So in New Zealand, they recommend 0.7 to 1 part per million with a target of 0.85, which, as I was saying, doesn't even make any sense. You know, they call it optimal. Who knows what optimal?
It's just guesswork. It's just
yeah,
peaceful.
and of course everybody's drinking different amounts of water, and you know, as I say, like a bottle-fed baby gets like 200 times more fluoride than a breastfed baby, because breastfeeding screens out fluoride.
But if you go to the government, surely they would say we have studies that show that this is safe, that, oh my God, that phrase, safe and effective.
Yeah.
Do they? Does the government justify it with their studies?
Well, they've got a study. They've got an A study by dentists called Broadbent in Dunedin. Now, they keep bringing this one out. So they brought it out, you know, even in 2021, in the latest Chief Science Advisor's report, you know. And so they bring out Broadbent, and that was from about 2014 as well. But the trouble with his study, so he looked at, it was basically Mosgiel, which was not fluoridated back then, compared to the rest of Dunedin. But they didn't tell us which children were taking fluoride tablets. And back in the 70s, we know that a lot of parents were giving children fluoride tablets. So it's a completely unknown. The study's a completely unknown thing, because we don't know the fluoride exposure of the so-called non-fluoridated to the fluoridated.
Let's go back to the 70s, because I know I've had this debate with friends. I remember when I was a student, a friend was at dental school and his father was a dentist, and he was saying, oh no, Liz, fluoride is really good for protecting teeth. What do you say to that? You said earlier it's not proven to do that. What are you basing that on? Because the studies over the years seem to have gone the other way, Mary.
Well, when you actually look at the studies, they don't say that it's good for teeth. What it is people don't look carefully enough at the studies. So, you know, people look at summaries and then people talk about a study, you know, they just review a study, or you know what I mean, it just accumulates like that. But the Cochrane review was out in 2015, and I noticed that Bloomfield has referenced that in his latest directive to these councils. That was 2015, and it said, we did a meta-analysis and we looked at the studies, and they go, oh, it does seem to, you know, we think it reduces dental decay. However, all of these studies are pre-1975, and things may have changed since then, which they have. Dental decay has reduced dramatically since 1975, all over the world.
Well, wouldn't that be, can't we argue that is due to fluoride? What
No, because it's reduced everywhere. So whole of Europe doesn't have fluoridated water. You know, and only 10% of the UK has fluoridated water.
What do they put the reduction in dental caries down to then?
Well, then it's sort of like, I suppose, estimating or guessing or whatever, because there's not quite enough research, because people aren't interested in researching. But things like eating cheese, refrigeration, toothbrushing, fluoride toothpaste maybe. I don't advise that, but you know. So it's different things like that.
I mean, that's an interesting point I was going to ask you about. You talk about individual doses. Is it enough, if we do believe in fluoride, to put it on in our mouth, in our bodies, via the toothpaste, and we don't need this medicated water, as you say?
Yeah.
So people who are pro-fluoride, they can still have the choice, can't they, of getting their fluoride from their toothpaste, surely?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, so we would go to the council and argue that point, and then someone might say, oh, but poor people can't afford toothpaste, right? Which, I mean, is kind of like, well, a fluoride toothpaste, I think it costs about $2.50 or something. I haven't bought one, so I don't know. But a non-fluoride toothpaste is actually a lot more expensive, because it's the people that know, you know, are going and buying the more expensive non-fluoride toothpaste. But if that was really the case, we could provide toothpaste for people. But anyway, so what they did in Scotland, where they had far worse dental health than we have in New Zealand, they introduced the Child Smile program. So what they did is they brought in school toothbrushing to the you know, the young children, say 5 or 6, and the preschoolers at the creches and things. And what they found was a dramatic reduction in tooth decay. And that also came along with, you know, education of the parents, you know, getting them off the lollies and all of that sort of thing. But what they halved the number of children needing general anaesthetic. And,
Wow.
that's serious, because in New Zealand, about 50% of the children don't have any dental decay anyway, fluoridated or non-fluoridated areas. You know, half the children have got perfectly good teeth. So then for the children that do, the latest 2020 school statistics, because that's the latest we've got, actually shows us the average number of the children that do. They used to just show us the average decayed, missing or filled teeth, which didn't really tell us enough because that was over everybody. Whereas now they're saying the average number for the children that have dental decay, and it's around about 4 fillings or decayed, missing or filled teeth. But you know, you'll have some that have 1 and you'll have some that have 10.
4 out of how much? 4 out of...
Oh, 4%.
Oh, 4%.
No, sorry, not 4%. 4, we've got about 25, 30 teeth.
Yes.
You know, so it's about 4 out of
25.
That. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So, because in a certain part of New Zealand's population, there's still high consumption of these Fantas and Coca-Colas and the sweet drinks, and there've been ideas put to governments for over a decade saying let's reduce the sugar intake. We'll get better health outcomes, reduce diabetes, and better dental outcomes. And yet the government doesn't do that, does it?
No.
It's incredible. I asked you before the theories, and you can only surmise because none of us will know, but why would our government do this? Why is our government so keen? Do you think in your theory, and obviously it's based on what you've heard and researched as well, but push something on the New Zealand population without any real debate, without any real listening or discourse with the New Zealand people about whether we want this or not? What's going on?
Well, one of the things that is definitely going on is that it's a byproduct from the phosphate fertiliser industry. So fluoride, the fluoridation chemicals come from the chimneys. So when they make phosphate fertiliser, one of the byproducts is fluoride. So they squirt water up, they put a cap on the chimneys because otherwise the fluoride goes out to all the surrounding areas and poisons. You know, what was happening was poisoning the cattle and the crops, and people were getting sick. So they've had to, for years and years now, 50 years or something, put caps on these industries. Then they wash it out water and they have a toxic waste problem. Now, they can't take that toxic waste and just dump it in the ocean or a lake or a river. But they can sell it to the local, water council and drip feed it through the public water supply. So they change a toxic waste into a product. Now, that product contains traces of lead, arsenic, mercury, and a whole lot of other heavy metals, including sometimes uranium. So we have that. We got that analysis out of Hamilton Council when we were arguing, having that debate there. So we have that on our website and in that book that I'd showed you, So now that is definitely true. So what we did in 2016 is we did a little TV ad, 30 seconds, and we showed this is where the fluoride comes from and this is what it contains, these traces of these heavy metals, and they don't clean it up, they put it in your drinking water, all right?
Hydrofluorosilicic acid, commonly known as fluoride, is a waste product collected from the chimneys of the fertilizer industry. This fluoride chemical also contains traces of lead, aluminium, mercury, arsenic, and sometimes uranium. It is banned from being released into the air, sea, lakes, and rivers because it is toxic to animals and the environment. Instead, ratepayers' money buys this toxic chemical handled by workers wearing hazmat suits like this. This fluoride is what goes into our drinking water. Find out the facts. Visit fluoridefree.org.nz.
Now, of course, people in New Zealand didn't believe that, thought that sounded crazy, which, it should be, right? That should be a crazy thing to do.
I'm still speechless at what you've just told me.
Yeah.
I am just taking in what you've just told me, repackaging a major toxic material.
I know.
And selling it back to the people as good for us.
Yeah.
So people said it was crazy, and what happened?
So they complained to the Advertising Standards Authority. So we gave the proof. So then what happened? So people can find out on our website. We've actually got a lot of information on our website. So fluoridefree.nz.
You have got one of the best booklets I have seen any organisation put out, Mary. It's absolutely extraordinary. Do people have to pay for that one?
Yeah, we would like to, because we're always running out of money.
Yeah, well, that's something we'll put up at the end, your account number, for people who want you to be able to keep doing this fine work. But also that booklet, how much is it?
$10.
$10. It's worth 5 times that. It's an excellent book.
Cool, thanks.
So you then produced the research, and what happened with the ad?
Oh, so we kept the ad, and the Advertising Standards Authority didn't uphold the complaints.
My God. So
because we could prove it.
Why don't you put that out again and get people thinking about it?
Oh, it costs a lot of money to put an ad on the TV. Yeah. And we've done ads on the radio at times and things, but it's a lot of money.
Don't you look longingly at the millions and millions and millions of ads this government spent, ad money spent on pushing a jab? Isn't it extraordinary? And we could have had the money that could have gone into, could have funded whole new hospitals in this country.
Well, as a little aside, which I hope you don't mind, but I suppose you could always take this out, is, you know, thinking about all that money they've spent, and someone was telling me about a woman with 5 children living in a hotel room for the last 5 months, and they don't have a sink. She has to use a bath to get the drinking water.
God.
And you're like, and now there's something like 250 children living in cars, and we've just spent billions.
Yes. It's child poverty under this government has gone through the roof.
You know, I mean...
So who is funding this? Is this a New Zealand funded idea, or is it coming out of America?
It's coming out of
America seems to be the home of toxins. It should be Toxicville, not America. It is. They just seem to be pushing toxic material out to those gullible countries like New Zealand that go, yeah, we'll have it. We'll follow your idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose I think that the big reasons are the phosphate fertiliser industry, and there would also, you know, be pressure from the USA and even Australia where they want to get rid of it. So say if New Zealand stopped, they wouldn't like it for us to stop, because that's going to put pressure on them. They start becoming, you know, one of only 5 countries and one of only 4, you know, so they're not going to want us to stop. Then I think the other reasons would be people like Ashley Bloomfield wants to, you know, climb the ladder, be at the top. I don't think he cares at all about people, really. That's just my opinion. And
it's not an opinion. I can tell you, I have interviewed countless people in tears who have said, I mean, one of them that stands out from New Plymouth, who said, I wrote and said I have to look after my disabled children, that the first jab caused me anaphylaxis, that I nearly died. They had to bring me back to life. And I've asked him for an exemption, and my letter is signed Ashley Bloomfield, saying you will not get an exemption. To look after your damaged children, you must be jabbed. And if you die with the second jab, then we'll have the crash cart and we'll bring you back to life. And I know that's been on many letters. His name is so dripping with blood, as Ardern's name is now. He couldn't care to have allowed that letter out in his name.
No, and I know of other people like that as well.
Yeah, so it's not defamatory to say this is a man who doesn't care.
Yeah. Well,
It's
I had a meeting with him once, about 2016, something like that, 2017 perhaps, because we had a workshop at the Hutt City Council. So there were 2 doctors and a dentist. No, 2 dentists, a doctor and myself on the one side, and there was him and a DH, because he was the CEO of the Hutt Valley DHB, and there was a DHB dentist on the other side. So anyway, they didn't really know much on his side. So I asked them for a meeting, and so we sat down and we were talking about fluoridation, and I said to him, well, you know that they know that fluoride doesn't work by swallowing anyway. Even the people that promote fluoridation, they say that it works on the outside of the teeth. So the CDC came out with that in 1999. They said, we now know that fluoride works on, it's, you know, primarily a topical benefit, not systemic.
My God.
So then they say, like, you know, they've got ridiculous reasons. So when we were in Hamilton, one of the dentists that came along from the Ministry of Health, so the Hamilton councillors are like, oh, okay, so if it doesn't work by swallowing, you know, why are we putting it in the water? And he gets up and he goes, well, I'm sure you're all, you know, wondering about that. This is their reason, right? He says, so when you drink fluoridated water, it goes through your whole body and it gets stored in your bones and your soft tissue, which is very interesting, isn't it? Your soft tissue, kidneys, liver, pineal gland, etc. And he says, and then some of it comes out your salivary glands to provide a constant low dose topical benefit. That it's just so, it's such a stretch of the imagination. And what comes out of your salivary glands is like 0.015 part per million, like some tiny amount. And they know that that cannot cause, you know, a topical benefit. They put 1,000 parts per million in the toothpaste.
My God.
So a point...
Plus, he's meant to be a health person, and he's saying it's okay for it to be stored in the bones and the soft tissue.
So that's the dentist, right? That was this dentist,
Yeah.
whose name, strangely, I can't remember at the moment because he was like a big thing for us. Anyway, so when I had sat down with Ashley Bloomfield, and so then I ended up saying, well, since it doesn't work by swallowing, what's the mechanism? You know, you tell me, Ashley. And he got really angry at me, and he went, you've hijacked this, or something like that. You've sprung this on me. You didn't say you were gonna, you know. And I was like, whoa, okay, I didn't mean to, hijack you about anything. I just assumed that was a basic question.
So that very mild-mannered, mousy sort of man that we saw every day in Parliament, there's another side to him.
Yeah, there's another side. So he was.
How did that conversation end, Mary?
Well, I backed off quite a bit.
You had to calm him down.
Well, I mean, he wasn't like throwing things around the room or anything,
No,
it's
there's
just
a
that he'd
lot
got,
in that.
and I sort of thought, oh, I wish now I had stood up to him more, though.
And that's also a man who shows himself as very much disliking anything that goes off the script, any unprepared, valid, genuine questions. That's a real concern.
Yeah. Well, don't you think that's a basic question, though?
Absolutely.
If you're promoting fluoridation, you would know how it's meant to work.
Did he ever answer it?
No. So then we had an argument through email, and, I was providing evidence back to him like that. So, well, actually, what comes out your salivary glands is blah, blah, whereas they say this amount is what, actually provides it. And he says, well, I believe what the Surgeon General of the US Public Health Service says. That's it.
Oh, my God.
That was it. That's his whole reasoning. So it's just like a religion, isn't it? And you see, he's just not going to waver because he doesn't want his career affected. That's what I presume. I mean, we could maybe one day ask Ashley, why are you not going to waver from it? Well, what's the reasoning behind it?
I saw his Christmas photo last year on Facebook and really felt like vomiting, this happy, smiley family. And I had just interviewed Casey Hodgkinson, a 23-year-old whose whole life was destroyed by the jab that he pushed with Ardern, saying it was safe and effective. And I thought, how are you going to do that this Christmas, or any year, or any life, have peace when you've done what you've done, Ashley Bloomfield?
I'll tell you something else shocking. I was on Twitter the other day, and Gloria, the Green MP, whose surname I can't pronounce, you know who I mean?
Yeah, the Green MPs are as bad.
Yep, so Gloria, she says about the protest last week or whatever it was, down in Wellington, she said that we were anti-disabled.
Oh, they're disgusting.
Sickening, eh? I was saying it in our group on Sunday, and that the group just audibly gasps that we're anti-disabled.
And look at them now trying to stand up for all these issues and sending out notes asking for money. Every time they contact me, I say, I will never vote Green again. Ever,
same. I used to vote for them as well.
Traitors. I mean, if they were Green, they would be looking at what's going in our water, bringing it back to fluoride and saying,
that's why
this is not okay.
That's when I stopped, because we couldn't get through to them on fluoride.
What, they won't take your calls, they won't meet you, or what?
No.
My God, they've sold out. Mary, you are quite extraordinary. I mean, I know the quality of your research, and I know we will be able to put papers down that justify these claims, which is why I'm not putting you on the spot totally and cross-examining you on that. I want people to read and research what's down below this interview. We will put that up. But what drives you? You're an incredible woman.
Well, what happened was in 1999, I was living in Petone, and it was non-fluoridated, never been fluoridated. And it had been its own borough as well, up to 1998. And Petone used to be quite a poor place, so there was a lot of community in a poor place. It's funny, eh?
People help each other, isn't it funny?
Yeah, and big families, big immigrant families, and there are lots of kids playing out on the road and all that. I didn't grow up there, but I moved there when I was 16. And anyway, they said that I had only just found out about fluoridation because I'd grown up in a fluoridated area. I thought what most people think, I think they even teach it at school, I'm not sure, but I thought that fluoride was a nutrient. I thought that most of the world did it, particularly the Western world. I thought it reduced dental decay, and I thought there wouldn't be any doubts about its safety. Because I thought if you had any doubts, you wouldn't put something in the drinking water. And then I found out all of those things were wrong, right? So there was like, oh no, we don't want fluoride in our water. And we were really proud of our water in Petone because it was the best drinking water, we said, in the country, but probably wasn't, because I know Hastings and Napier and Christchurch have good water. But, you know, we were a poor place, so it was something to be really proud of, right? So what they wanted to do was close down the Petone pumping station and hook us up to the Waterloo pumping station in Lower Hutt, which is basically the same artesian water supply, but they wanted fluoride. So anyway, I had a friend and I said, we should do something, and she said, yep. So we did. We had a big campaign. We kept it out of Petone. Now, the council spent $450,000 moving fluoride injectors around so that Petone was not fluoridated. So that shows you the difference, what it was like 23 years ago. 23 years ago, you had both sides in the newspaper.
Yes.
And they did a big survey of Petone, and the surveyors would say to people, you realise that you are going to get Lower Hutt water. The only difference is fluoride, and people were like, yeah, we understand that, we don't want fluoride. Now it would be different because a lot of Wellingtonians, government workers, have moved into Petone. The whole demographics has changed. But because I was speaking up and I was going to the council and I was writing letters and all that, I really had to know about the subject. So it wasn't just my ethical right to not be medicated. So I was reading everything, and the last thing that kind of got to me, that why it's been a compulsion, is there's some people are hypersensitive to fluoride, probably around 1 to 5%. But definitely 1% of people are hypersensitive to fluoride, and they spend their lives being sick for, you know, the whole different ways they might be sick.
Really? Elaborate on that. Sick in what ways? Autoimmune kind of thing?
Mostly it would be chronic fatigue. Skin issues as well, but chronic fatigue, stomach upsets, because it, you know, can interfere with your gastro. It can cause bowel problems.
So it interferes with that gut microbiome.
Yes.
The balance of bacteria.
Yes.
That's crucial for our health.
Yes, definitely. And people can look on our website under testimonials and see some of these stories, and they're heartbreaking, actually. So that was what really got to me, because I thought, we can't sit back and know that some people are really, really sick and just do nothing about it. When this is so obvious, of course we shouldn't do it. And back then, you know, and we'd had success with Petone. Other people had success keeping it out of places.
I just have to stop you on that sentence before. We can't sit back and do nothing knowing that other people are getting really, really sick. Would that all New Zealanders listen to that line for now, when you think about all the people we each know who've been sick from the jab? And here's a Kiwi. I mean, Mary, this is the essence of you. You didn't bemoan it. You didn't sit round and complain. You didn't look for someone else to do it. You rolled your own sleeves up and you said, I will do it. I will do what I can to stop what is wrong.
Yeah, and other people with me.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
But I'm saying it takes one person to do it, and one and one and one.
Definitely.
It's in the one. It's in each of us being the one that stands up, that change comes.
Yeah, so I saw a meme the other day, and it said, I am only one person, I cannot change anything, said 7 billion people.
Yes, that's it. So you researched hugely.
Yeah, and so, and then another thing, it would be good for people to read those testimonials, because Stalin said, 1 death is a tragedy, 1,000 is a statistic. So read those testimonials and see how badly it's affecting people.
And we'll put that website up all through this interview so people can go there.
Yeah, and the website is a great place to go to, because that's where we've got the research as well. So under science, you can find the links to all the government reviews or big scientist, reviews, and the actual studies. So we'll link to the JAMA study, and a link to, a thyroid study that was done in the UK that showed a big increase in lowered thyroid. So that study in the UK, done by this researcher called Stephen Peckham, he looked at all of the medical practices across the country, and he had all the data, and so he could show in the fluoridated areas, women had something like 40% more increase in lowered thyroid than non-fluoridated areas.
And thyroid is crucial to hormone balance and hormone production throughout the body. It's an absolutely crucial nexus in the body.
Yeah. So, lower thyroid causes lethargy, depression, and inability to lose weight. So 3 big things that are affecting this country. So there's a whole lot of people that can't lose weight and they don't know why. That would be a reason. And even if it's not in your water, if you drink any beer or any juices or anything like that from Waitakere, you eat a bread that's from Masterton, it's all over the place. So I don't think anyone's avoiding fluoride.
And you mentioned before that it's not in Europe, and I presume that in Europe the people were strong enough to say to their governments, we ain't having it, we don't want it, don't you dare do this. Is that right?
That's right. And so actually I wonder if that's on our website, but it's definitely on fluoridealert.org. But you can find all the statements from the health officials around Europe, and they were saying stuff like, well, we don't really know if you give it to the whole, we think it's unethical, we think it's, not quite scientific to do that, or people didn't want it, or this, that and the other. But say in the Netherlands, they don't put any chemicals in their water at all. They clean up all of their water. They don't put chlorine in like we do.
And they're a smart people. They are a smart, intelligent people. Poor old New Zealand. We've just been under assault from overseas influences on our weak government representatives, weak like the Greens, weak like Labour, who cave in to the overseas influence. We really need a shift. What do you think? What do you think we need to do in New Zealand? Because we're going to move into local government issues, which is where I was going to start with you, but the fluoride background has been crucial. What do we need in New Zealand, Mary?
Well, I think for one thing, we need New Zealanders to wake up.
Yes.
That's the first thing, is we need so many more New Zealanders to take an interest, to say that they are responsible, because say going back to that, who is responsible? If we say to ourselves, I am responsible.
That's it.
I am responsible. And if we all start saying that, that's going to make a big difference.
I also picked up something with your story of being in Petone when you were a younger woman, and it was a community, and there were community meetings and neighbours connected. I think we need to decentralise this country rapidly and build up beautiful little communities all over this country who say to central government, back off, you don't get to overreach, we will run our own lives.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think the whole issues that we're facing could be framed on centralisation versus decentralisation.
Yeah.
And then, coming up to Auckland these last few days, I've been shocked at the amount of traffic. Mm-hmm. I've been like, whoa, how do you guys live up here? Mm-hmm. And the other thing is all of those Agenda 2030 housing.
It's terrible. The housing now, the trees that have gone under Phil Goff, the number of trees Phil Goff's local government has allowed, beautiful old 120-year-old trees, just gone, so that these hideous little matchbox houses can go up everywhere so they can get more money.
And so I thought we even have to decentralise the population.
Yes.
So, look, there's little places like Paiatua down in, I'm not sure what you would call that area, Horizons or something, sort of north of Wairarapa.
Yeah.
And, they would have been a really thriving township years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it just needs some industry. But all the industry's gone.
So that decentralisation idea is wonderful. With your knowledge of fluoride, did you see certain patterns when the COVID rollout happened? The pushing, the manipulation, even the lying and the misrepresentation of scientific data. Did you see that?
It's all the same playbook. It's the same playbook as 1080, fluoridation, GE.
What are the hallmarks of that playbook in your mind?
In my mind, it's that we don't get to hear both sides, that what's portrayed on the mainstream media is not actually the truth, that it's some sort of manipulation or kind of summary where they've tweaked it in a way. Say for instance in fluoridation at the moment, we're told, fluoridation reduces dental decay by 40%, and that's what the public hears. And you go, okay, well, hang on, where'd you get that study from? Oh, that's from the 2009 SAPER report that looked at the 2008 dental survey. So for starters, we're already like 14 years old, and that survey only had 60 children in each of the age groups, and the 40% we're talking about half a filling. You know, so once you get it's the same with COVID and all the rest of it. That's the sort of thing they do. You could say 40%, or the COVID jab is 95% effective.
Oh my
But
God.
you know, it wasn't really, was it?
Safe and effective, she said over and over again, and most people have now had COVID, so it wasn't effective. It didn't stop the spread, and so many jab injured, over 62,000, so it wasn't safe. It's extraordinary. So you're right, and also very little public discussion. What would you love with fluoride, and let's bring in the COVID thing? What is that new New Zealand? Is it a place, a television channel where we have those sorts of discussions, Mary?
Yeah, we need it on TV. We need it in the media.
Yeah.
So
We need a whole new media in this country now.
Yeah. So it needs to roll back to, you know, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, where both sides would be presented. I mean, it wouldn't even have been great back then, but I probably didn't notice as much. But I mean, I've definitely seen a difference over the years.
Yeah.
So like, in the past, when something happened with fluoridation, I would be getting heaps of phone calls from mainstream media. They wouldn't do a great job on what I said, but at least I was getting the phone calls. So we had Ashley Bloomfield tell those 14 councils recently that they have to fluoridate, and I had one phone call from TV3. I put them on to a retired dentist in Whangarei, and they put out one little line he said, which he'd talked to them for like half an hour, and they put out one little line that he said was something like, oh no, it doesn't really reduce dental decay, or something benign. They picked out the most benign thing he said.
Shallow.
And they just said one line.
So shallow.
That was it. There's a whole discussion.
So in this New Zealand, we need to move to, as you said, self-responsibility, and that includes what? Doing lots of our own research. So people going and looking up the fluoride information on your site.
Yeah, and feeling responsible so that we do things. And I think sometimes too, is it like a bit of self-respect or something? Because over the years I've wondered, like, why are people not outraged? Like, I've always felt it's outrageous, you know, because they go, oh, I know you're passionate about fluoride. It's like, well, isn't that the normal response? That you're putting you want to put a toxic waste in my drinking water, and I'm not supposed to be passionate about that? I'm supposed to be like, oh well, okay, never mind. I'll just drink toxic waste for the rest of my life. I mean, and so what do people do? They go, oh well, it's all too hard. Oh well, it's only a little bit of toxic waste. Well, we're all still alive. You know, my thyroid might have gone. I've got arthritis now, and you know, some of my children got a bit of ADHD, but never mind.
So it could be implicated in that huge amount of ADHD.
Oh yeah, there's definitely studies on that as well. Yeah.
And they're on your site?
Yep, they're there. There's links to the actual studies.
So now we need to move into another area that Kiwis can do, and the bravest of us, the best of us, have stood up in our local elections and said, I will do something locally. Are you one of those, Mary?
Yeah, I don't think I'm the bravest of them, though.
Well, I think all of you who are doing it are, because at the moment there is something just McCarthy-esque. In the McCarthy era in America, there was this going after anybody, particularly in Hollywood, who had any communist links. Let's put them on the stands and cross-examine them. And that is what one of our most reprehensible news outlets, one of our most gutter press outlets, Stuff, appropriately called Stuff, because it is stuffed. It is a government propagandist mouthpiece bully.
Yeah.
And it's going after each of our beautiful, questioning, ethical, honourable, intelligent Kiwis who's had the gumption to say, there's something wrong with the rollout of the COVID jab. I'm not sure about this. There's something wrong with some of these other issues, 1080 or fluoride. I want to research and question. And now Stuff is trying to put each one of them on the mat with a brutal hit piece article. It is one of the most shameful things I've ever seen in New Zealand journalism.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I've never seen anything like this.
Those people who are standing up are incredibly brave, and we want to do a series on them. Are you standing?
Yeah, I'm standing for the Featherston Community Board. So it's not as high profile as going for the council, and that's because I haven't been on a council before. So I was starting with the community board, and I've got a friend who's on the community board, and she's going for council. So I also didn't want to stand against her, you know. So Stuff did a thing on us well, no, it was the Waikato, not the Waikato, Wairarapa Times Age did a thing on us last weekend. So not the, was it the weekend? Yeah, it was the weekend just gone on Saturday. They had a front page. There was us two, another few women from around the Wairarapa. And they sent me a letter on Friday and they said, you know, we've heard that fact Aotearoa have told us that you are opposed to fluoridation, that you've been seen handing out flyers to students, high school students, and anti-vaccine ones, and that you're involved with VFF, or, you know, Voices for Freedom.
It's an absolute witch hunt.
Yeah. And then they said, so what do you say about those allegations? And I was like, allegations? Is this a crime? So I just sent back to them and I said, well, actually, I'm National Coordinator for Fluoride Free New Zealand, and most of the world doesn't have fluoridation, even the whole of Western Europe, most of Western Europe, so a little bit in Spain. And, you know, and a few blah, blah, blah about that. And it's like, I just sort of can't believe that they're saying this is an allegation.
It's extraordinarily bullying.
So then, so some of the people have, you know, gone back to the newspaper, really complained, because they said, that's right, that we were involved in sovereign groups. Now, I'm actually not involved in a sovereign group. Not that I've got anything against it, I'm just not actually involved in any sovereign group.
A sovereign group is looking at a different form of governance for New Zealand, because many of us now can see the corruptions in the form of governance we have.
Yeah. So I'm not saying I'm opposed to anything, but I personally am not actually involved, and actually I don't think any of the people that are standing in the Wairarapa that they listed are involved. So, and one of them's a councillor at Carterton. So they've gone back to them, had a big complaint, and then they sent us a letter to say, oh look, we're really sorry, we're going to put an apology on page 3 on Monday.
This is the Wairarapa Age.
Yeah, the Wairarapa Times Age. So they had Saturday's paper, which way more people read, and then they're going to put it on page 3 on Monday. So, and but we're complaining and saying, well, that's not actually good enough, because they've already tarnished everybody. And I don't even know where they got that. Well, they're saying fact Aotearoa, but, you know, say with the sovereign thing, when I first read it, it looked like they were saying that I was part of a sovereign group, but it wasn't. It was just this implication. They talked about sovereignty, talked about us, and then went back to a big sovereign thing. So they painted us as these really anti-government people. Yeah.
What do you say to them? What do you say to them?
Oh, I just think that they've just got to start doing some proper journalistic reporting. And it was like Winston Peters says, like, they're meant to be the fourth estate, but they've turned into the fifth column.
They have. They've turned into government mouthpieces. This fact Aotearoa, if you see that, you know that it's something twisted and not true. It's very, very cynical. It's very much PR spin and propaganda spin. It's very Orwellian, actually. What about the pamphlets that you gave out, these terrible pamphlets? How dare you? All of these are things that in a normal democratic country that's free, that has free speech, wouldn't even cause a ripple. This has been our right. This is what my father fought for in World War II. For you to be able to protest if you don't like something. Well, so what were the pamphlets? What was happening?
Well, what happened was a few of us went to outside the high school. So normally I actually wouldn't go to a high school to give out pamphlets, because I would give them to parents. And the only reason I did is because the government and the Ministry of Health were vaccinating these children without parental consent, saying that from 12 up they can make up their own mind, which is just absolutely bizarre, that a 12-year-old is meant to be able to make a life-changing decision like that. Of course they can't. It's
bizarre that any parents would have gone along with that, any parents at all. It's bizarre that parents weren't turfing up this government at that point. It's just so clearly wrong.
Yeah.
It's not even something to question. Surely even the corrupt journalists would be thinking, I don't want that for my 12-year-old. It's amazing, isn't it?
It is amazing, and I got into trouble with my family for doing that, because I was I think it was on the front page. I try not to look too much, you know. I just knew I was in the paper having done that, and so I got sort of blasted from my family for daring to do that. But the thing was, when we talked to these kids, they were really interested, most of them.
And what were they saying? What were they
were like, oh, really? you know, and a lot of them really wanted to know.
In other words, they weren't being given all the facts at
Oh,
school.
no, they didn't know anything.
What was in the pamphlets?
I can't remember now. I think it was about blood clots. And saying that, you know, there's a risk that it can cause blood clots, and that their chance of dying of COVID or having a severe effect from COVID was really, really, really low.
So could you back that up scientifically?
Yeah, well, we know that, don't we? Because John Ioannidis, I mean, he's the world's leading epidemiologist, and his research was published on the World Health Organization, and he said that the infection fatality rate for everyone on average was something like 0.2%, which is, the flu was, I think, is 0.1, but for kids it was 0.001.
Absolutely.
So that's the top epidemiologist in the world saying that.
So I asked that because if these pseudo-journalists, because they're not real journalists, to be using their pens, using their positions to wield power, to do this McCarthy-esque sort of hunting down of people with different views from the government narrative, if they are watching this interview, they need to understand they're dealing with people who have researched what they stand for, who are intelligent, who are questioning, and who simply have a different viewpoint from the government narrative. And that's okay in our society. That is freedom, isn't it? Yeah, it used to be.
It used to be okay, and it was normal. And, you know, when we were at school, we were taught about that sort of thing. And debates. Our school used to have debates. But you know what? I was at a friend's place a while ago, and we had, me and another woman, we had exemption cards. And we told these young women they could use the mask exemption card, right? They ripped them up. They ripped up the exemption cards. They were like 18, 19, 20 or something. They ripped them up in front of us. And then we tried to say to them, why can't we have a debate? Let's have a discussion.
And what did they say?
Oh no, can't do that. They can't have a discussion on it.
And that has been put in place through our education system. There's
They've
been
been for the
something that has
university.
denuded their critical thinking faculty in our education system. And that, I think, has stemmed right back to Helen Clark's days 20 years ago.
Yeah, it has.
It's very sinister, Mary. How do you keep this optimism? You have this doggedness. I will keep going. Nothing will stop me. I'm not going to be deterred. I'm not going to give up. How do you keep your spirits up?
Well, for starters, we have to, don't we? You know. And then I've had a few people say to me, "Oh, you must be, you know, devastated about it going to central government and all the rest of it." And it's like, I think, well, why should I be devastated? I've done everything that I can. So why should I now go around feeling bad? You know, it's a bit like being resentful towards somebody. What's the point in it? Isn't it? You know, I'm only going to hurt myself if I go around being devastated. I've done everything I can do, and I'm continuing to do that. You know, and every time I talk, so I'm saying it now. So a really important thing is if somebody is pregnant or they're bottle feeding a baby, they definitely should not use fluoridated water, because that's where the most research is that it's really is quite likely that it will be affecting the child's mental development, their IQ. So, you know, I was saying earlier there's the study in paediatrics, but there's other really good studies around that, and you can easily find it on our website, but it's also one of 76 out of 84 human studies that shows that fluoride lowers IQ. Oh, and I better say this, which is important. Bloomfield, he relies on the 2014 study that the chief science advisor did, who at that stage was Gluckman. Gluckman and Skeg did this bit of research sort of thing, and they said, what they put in their summary was, they said at that stage there were 25 human studies, there was a meta-analysis, and it was showing that fluoride lowers IQ by about 7 IQ points. And they said, oh no, it only shows that fluoride lowers IQ by about half an IQ point, and that is not significantly significant, right? Now,
This is Peter Gluckman.
This is Peter Gluckman, because he was Chief Science Advisor then,
Wow.
and Skeg, who's Royal Society of New Zealand. So we quickly went to them and said, you've got that wrong. It's not half an IQ point, it's half a standard deviation. So a standard deviation for IQ is 14 IQ points on either side of 100, right? Half a standard deviation is 7 IQ points. Now, if you reduce a whole population by 5 IQ points, what you're doing is halving the number of geniuses and increasing by 50% the number of mentally impaired. Plus, this is the same shift that we found with lead. So that was also what came out with the paediatric study, is that the top lead researcher, Lampier, his name is, who was really heavily involved in finding low-dose lead impaired IQ. He's saying we've got even more research now with fluoride, but we're not doing anything. And we've got Green Jean, who's a top researcher in mercury, saying this is really serious. So anyway, we go back to Gluckman and Skeg, say you've got that wrong. So they change it to go, oh, it reduces IQ, by about half a standard deviation, but they don't change the conclusion when they still say, which is statistically insignificant.
Good heavens.
So you go and read it, and most people don't know what a standard deviation on IQ is, do they?
So did you go back to Peter Gluckman again?
Yeah.
And what happened? What was the response?
Nothing. That's what it still says today.
Why? Why do you think our chief scientist was allowing that?
Because it would threaten the whole fluoridation. Because if they admit to that, fluoridation's gone. So if fluoridation's gone, and if they're responsible, they're going to be pilloried, taken out of their circles perhaps. There might be other things that go on behind the scenes. Well, there will be other things that go on behind the scenes that we don't know about. So there must be pressure, but then there's also the human thing. People do not like to admit that they're wrong. So there's a really good quote by Tolstoy, which I can't remember offhand, but it's something like, when people have promoted something or other and woven it into the fabric of their life, they cannot even see when they're wrong. The simplest of things, they will not be able to figure out that they were wrong. So it would be partly to do, might be a whole lot to do with that, that people just don't want to admit that they were wrong. Because just imagine, so if we put ourselves in their shoes, if you promoted fluoridation for a long time, and then you found out, and you did it because you thought that you were helping people, and you thought, this is reducing dental decay, and we're helping all of these children, and look, children in New Zealand have better teeth, blah, blah, blah. Then you found out, well, actually it didn't even do that. It didn't reduce dental decay. Probably pretty much everyone over 60 or 65, if they've had fluoridation all their lives, which isn't actually many New Zealanders yet, because the first place it started was Hastings in 54. But say Auckland was 63, Wellington 65, Dunedin not till the 70s. So we still don't have a lot of people that have gone their whole lives with fluoridation, right? But if you do go your whole life with fluoridation, I would say you're most likely to have arthritis, because they know the amount that accumulates in your bones, and they know the amount that's likely to cause skeletal fluorosis, which has the same symptoms as fluoride. So if you had 20 milligrams a day of fluoride for 10 years, that's what they think is the likely dose that would cause you to have skeletal fluorosis. First stage.
And what about the neurological impact? Is it implicated in Alzheimer's?
Yes, it's implicated, but there's not as much research on that. So say you were that person that had been promoting. So you found out, all these people might have arthritis. All of these women may have a thyroid problem. All of these children have had millions of people have had their IQ lowered. The increase in ADHD might be related, etc., etc. Wouldn't that be a bitter pill to swallow?
To admit to. The parallels with the rollout of the COVID response are just glaringly obvious. We don't even have to spell that out. The same problem here. All these people who've been saying safe and effective, how do they now back down and say, there are actually a lot injured, there are mounting deaths, there are very odd, inexplicable car accidents possibly caused by sole incidences in cars where people are having turns. They would have to admit to a mountain of results. You see, this is one of the reasons I wanted to bring you in, not just because that fluoride issue is so important. People are a bit overwhelmed and might say, I can't deal with fluoride and COVID, but they dovetail, don't they, Mary?
Well, they do, and also fluoride often brings people into understanding. Sometimes I call it New World Order 101, because it's an easier one for people to come to grips with. So someone living in a non-fluoridated town, they've never had fluoridation all their lives, then they're confronted with, but they're quite open-minded about it, because they've never really got into it and they haven't been drinking it their whole lives. So they can be objective about it. And so then they start going, and I mean, that's how I got into things. You know, then I was like, oh, so the media and the government actually lie to us on something really, really serious. So once you know the media and the government lie, then your whole world changes, doesn't it? Your whole world view changes. Because then everything you look at, you go, okay, well, they might be lying about that. I've got to go and have a look a bit further.
I think that's called critical thinking. And you're right, fluoride is an easier gateway into understanding what else is going on, because there isn't the enormous propaganda and mind-numbing advertising saying fluoride's good, fluoride's good, fluoride's good, which is what they did with the COVID-19 rollout. This is good, this is good. They stopped the critical thinking.
Yeah.
We can still have it on the fluoride issue.
Yeah, and I mean, the only thing they're saying for fluoride is that it's good for your teeth. So people aren't as scared as that. It's not as scary. Especially someone who hasn't had fluoridation all their lives. They're kind of like, oh, but I've got it in my toothpaste. My teeth are okay. My kids don't have any dental decay. You know, so whereas like with the COVID thing, you're going to die. Everyone's going to die.
Okay, so we've got Mama Mary at home saying, I'm kind of interested in this. I've got young children. I want to learn more. Where do they start, Mary?
Yeah, go to our website. There's, you know, there's the beginning things, you know, so there's an introductory, and then people can drill down. So like under New Zealand information, you've got, is your town fluoridated? Is my council fluoridated? Where do they get it from? What does it cost? The complaints to the Advertising Standards Authority, there's all sorts of things. And there's really good videos to watch, you know, so like on the environment, the impact on the environment, on fish and all sorts. And the fact that it came from the, apart from the phosphate fertiliser industry, aluminium industry, the Manhattan Project, that's really how it got started, because it's part of, it was part of creating the A-bomb. And that's how it got to such a high level, you see. That
is an enormous one to research, but there is plenty of evidence for that.
There's a really, really good video to watch. It's an interview with an author called Christopher Bryson, and it's called The Fluoride Deception. He's written a really good book, but he gives the whole background into how that happened, because they needed it for the A-bomb. So, and they didn't want to lose out against the Russians, and the workers were all getting sick. But they didn't want to lose, so they said, stop researching, because I'd found out all these bad things that were happening to the workers. And then that's how it got to the top levels, and how they were able to shift it from a poison, because everybody knew it was a poison before that, how they shifted from poison to a nutrient.
It's an extraordinary story, that one.
It is, eh?
But that is, this whole idea of conspiracy theory, as I said at the beginning, needs to be taken back and owned, and be proud of that label, all of us, as no, we research, we question, we're open-minded, we're willing to look at other possibilities, other explanations. We're not gullible. We don't just fall for a government that says, you will think this way. It's a badge of honour. I look at someone like Susie Wiles, who was made New Zealander of the Year, Mary, and then I compare you. How many years researching? How many years standing up on this?
Oh, well, it's now 23.
23 years, and you are still as resilient probably as you were at the beginning. You are still as determined, you are still as dedicated to the health of all your fellow New Zealanders.
Yeah, but it's just got harder because now there's COVID.
But you are exceptional. This is what the New Zealander of the Year should look like. Somebody who's dedicated 23 years to telling the truth.
There's other people though.
I know, but I really commend you. It's brilliant, and keep in touch with us. Please send us the information. Let us know websites, and I'd like to put the best studies just directly underneath this, as well as your website.
Yeah.
And your book as well. Perhaps we can advertise that, and your account number.
Yeah.
So if people want to support you, they can put money in, so this research keeps going.
Cool, because you know we've never been paid, anyone in our group. We're all volunteers, and we need more money for flyers. So Kane in Te Awamutu, he's getting a good group going down in the Waipa, and we need more money to pay for the flyers that we've ordered. So yeah, people could help, and we'd really like people in local groups around the country to stand up and go, okay, you know, especially those 14 new councils now stand up and say no, because looking at what Bloomfield has done, in his words, to meet the criteria of the Act, he hasn't met it, and I think that we should be able to fight back against that.
And what does that involve, fighting back against Ashley Bloomfield saying everywhere should be fluoridated?
Well, I think that we need to go to the councils, the local councils, and say they have to do the right thing. They're voted in by the people to represent the people, not to represent the government or the Ministry
industry.
Yeah, or the Ministry of Health or anybody, but to represent the people. So if the people say, we don't want it, which is the usual in non-fluoridated areas, then they need to be responding to that. They also need to be looking at the truth. And the truth is he had to meet a certain criteria. And what I've just seen this morning from what he said he met with Waipa, it doesn't add up. He hasn't done enough. He hasn't done enough to say that.
Can you give an example of the criteria he hasn't come up to?
Yeah, so he's meant to look at the dental decay rates and compare that to the cost, right? So he said to Waipa Council, he said they have to start fluoridating Cambridge. But he said, I've looked at the dental health statistics from New Zealand Dental School statistics for the whole of Waikato, and I think that, you know, that's really, it's good, you know what I mean? Like, there's 40-odd% of children who have some form of dental decay in Waikato. But what he doesn't tell people, so there's two things. One, Cambridge is not indicative of the whole of Waikato, because Cambridge will have a higher socio-demographic than most of Waikato. Secondly, he doesn't compare the fluoridated to the non-fluoridated, and in actual fact in Waikato, the non-fluoridated, there's more children without dental decay in the non-fluoridated areas of Waikato than in the fluoridated.
That's telling.
Yeah.
And that again is a parallel. Let's look at the vaccinated results versus the unvaccinated.
Yeah.
These are not difficult scientific studies to follow through. It's extraordinary. Do you feel optimistic you might be able to wind that back before that comes through? Bloomfield. When is it due to be enforced, Bloomfield's directive?
They have to do that in the next 9 months or so. But what I feel is that we're either got the Great Reset or the Great Awakening.
And people can look at the Great Reset, the New World Order, the 2030 agenda under the World Economic Forum. We can't spoon feed all this. It's up to people to research. But as you say, going into fluoride opens up your eyes to what else might be happening in other areas and the corruptions of government and media.
Yeah, and there's something definite people can go and fight back about.
Yeah.
You know, and that will bring in more people from their community.
Yeah.
And they should. If they live in a non-fluoridated area, they should, you know, like Whangarei. I mean, people in Whangarei don't want fluoridation. People in the far north don't want it. So they should be hounding those councils and saying, you stand up for us. And those councils then could take an injunction against the Ministry of Health. They could join together, do an injunction and go, look, you haven't done what was said in the Act, apart from the fact that it doesn't even look at the adverse health effects.
Which people can find on your site.
Yeah.
Incredible, Mary. I do want to ask one thing, because of that beautiful feisty spirit of yours. Can you look down that camera and give your message to Jacinda Ardern? What would you say if she had walked in the door in the last 5 minutes and she was right here standing in front of you? What would be your message to this Prime Minister?
Right, Jacinda, you're hurting people. You're hurting people seriously with lots and lots and lots of things. And thousands of us know it. Tens of thousands of us know it. So you have to stop. You have to walk away, maybe leave the country, I think, something like that. But, you know, yeah, you have to stop. It's just, it's not on. We're not going to stand for it.
I can't add anything more to that. It's brilliant. Wonderful to talk to you, Mary. Keep in touch with us.
Oh, thank you, Liz. Thanks for having me.